So this audit of the San Antonio Police Department, they looked at 263 pieces of equipment, and they found that of all those pieces, 47 were expired and still being used. A lot of them were the soft bulletproof vests. There were bulletproof helmets in there that were still being used, raid vests, tactical vests, and then one bomb suit that was expired. For police gear, does expired mean the same thing as when we think of like food expiring?
Oh, it does, and I think it's even more serious than that. These are items that are used by law enforcement to keep officers safe and to keep the community safe. And it really takes special effort for someone to keep their what I call the eye on the ball in terms of the expiration dates, because once the expiration date passes, many times the warranties will be expired, meaning if an officer would get injured or killed, um, then you can't go back to the manufacturer who made it because they're going to say the item expired, or whether it be a helmet, whether it be chemical spray, first aid supplies, bulletproof vests, body worn cameras. All those things have an expiration date, and it takes someone to keep their eye on the ball to make sure those dates don't pass.
So there's a liability aspect to this as well if you're not able to go back to those manufacturers then.
There would be. So, anytime a police department provides equipment, items to law enforcement officers, it's incumbent upon the agency, the head of the agency, to make sure that the expiration dates don't pass. There could be civil liability because now I'm giving a piece of equipment to an officer. He or she gets injured, or the item is defective. It's not working properly because it's beyond its expiration. It's retired. There's liability on the department, and that's not a good situation to be in.
We were wondering if there are noticeable differences over time in things like bulletproof vests and shields and that type of equipment. Because when you think of expired, those just aren't typically the things that you think of. So are there changes that one can see when it gets past that warranty and expiration?
Well, for the bulletproof vest, you may not be able to actually see it. When I was working on the job, my carrier, that's the outside carrier that holds the Kevlar, you may see wear and tear, but that's just replacing the outside cover. Where the importance is that actual Kevlar, that there's timelines on it, whether it be 3 years or 4 years, because the seam could start to open up on the side, or the Kevlar becomes sort of brittle because of the wear and tear, depending on where you're at, south, north. If you're cold, there's sweat. All those things come into consideration. So that's why there's a shelf life on the Kevlar.
Why is it important for police departments to keep an inventory of all of their equipment when it expires and to have a plan to replace it when it gets to that point?
Well, the inventory, someone has to keep their eye on the ball in terms of when the item is going to expire, and you want to replace that before the expiration date. It's for safety. It's safety for all the employees, that they are operating, that they're functioning with equipment that has not gone beyond the manufacturer's expiration date, for the safety of the officer, whether it be a bulletproof vest, body worn camera, first aid kit, munitions, chemical sprays. All those have a shelf life.
So the audit also looked at what are called duodot auto injectors. Are you familiar with those?
Tell me a little more about them. That word does not ring a bell.
They're essentially things that officers can carry, and it's if someone were to be poisoned, it's a quick inject thing that they can use
Oh,
to help reverse the effects of the poison.
so
Um,
like Narcan.
kind of, kind
Okay,
of.
right.
Um, what is the importance of having those specifically up to date, not expired, in case there's a member of the community that needs it?
Well, it's that's very similar to any first aid items, that you're going to apply first aid security to somebody else. So the person's going to inhale or be subjected to something on their skin, and you want to make sure that that hasn't expired for medical reasons. Again, those items have shelf lives because of their consistency, because of their integrity of the substance, and they should not be used if they've expired. You could do harm to someone if you're putting some chemical device on something to save someone's life and it's expired. The item itself may have a detrimental effect on someone.
The San Antonio Police Department has agreed to all of the recommendations in this audit. They've said that they're going to be checking the inventory twice a year at the director of the department level, and then the command staff will be going over all of that annually as well. They've also said that if they have equipment that is ballistic in nature past its warranty, they might pass that on to training if it's still working, if it's still in good condition. If it's not, obviously they'll get rid of it. But is that something you see a lot of departments do, kind of pass those expired things on to training so that they're still being used?
I have. In fact, when I was on the job, we would get requests from many of the third world countries to take our bulletproof vests because we were just going to throw them away, discard them. Some countries cannot afford the bulletproof vest, so it's better to have something that have nothing. So a lot of times we would do that. Secondly, we would use those in training purposes for shooting scenarios, maybe as a backdrop or to block a door or a window or something like that. So that's kind of common that you can use some of the Kevlar in some training situations. The other items like chemical sprays, first aid kits, those all have to be disposed of. There's no use for those once they've expired.
And you've pretty much answered this already, but if I could just have you underscore the importance for the community of San Antonio for our officers to have these things up to date, what would that be?
So it's very important for any item that's carried by a law enforcement officer, whether it be protective item or an item that they have to use for first aid, that they have to be under the manufacturer's date. We can't use any of those items that are expired. They could bring harm upon the officer, or if an officer is using an item for the public as a whole, that could have a detrimental effect. It's good that the police chief in the department is not defensive on this issue. I'm glad to hear that they're going to wrap their arms around it. Now, the second thing would be is to conduct another audit to ensure that what they did say, that that's actually happening, and hopefully the chief of police will do that.